All right, welcome everyone to this week's edition of Performance Analytics Office Hours. Thanks for joining us, whether you are a first-time attendee or whether you've been with us in the past. My name is Tom Pasek. I'm part of the product marketing team here at ServiceNow. I'm going to take just a quick minute here to run through a few logistical items before we kick off with today's content. So a couple of reminders. These sessions are designed for you to get your questions answered by some of our product experts. So feel free to just listen in, kind of soak up the knowledge, but you do have the ability to ask questions here if you have something that you want to get at. Feel free to go off mute and ask questions. If you are not actively asking a question, I'm going to ask that you try and remain on mute so you don't disturb the presenters or the other attendees. You also have the ability to use the text chat in Zoom if you want to ask your question that way. Feel free. We've got a few folks who will be monitoring the questions popping in there. There's going to be some cases where maybe we can't get too deep into the specifics of something that's going on with your instance. So just be aware we might ask to just follow up with you outside of this call or raise an issue on high if we determine that's the best action based on what we're hearing. And last thing here, meetings are being recorded. If you or your organization is not comfortable with that, please go ahead and disconnect now. We do post the sessions. Let me pull up the URL here. So there's a bit.ly link here. All the previous recordings are available via that URL. You can also find a link to that via the post on community for this event where you signed up. So it's an easy way to get back to it if you can't remember that URL. And we'll get today's session posted soon after this ends, and you can go ahead and view that one as well. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Adam Stout, who's going to talk about cascading or custom interactive filters today.
Thanks, Tom. I am going to try to share PowerPoint now. Is that showing up okay for you guys?
Yeah, we're seeing that.
Great. All right, so 2 weeks ago, we talked about cascading interactive filters, which are available out of the box. We have reference filters, choice filters, date filters, Boolean filters, and cascading filters. Today, we're going to talk about some cases where none of those work for what I want to do. Before we get started, I'm going to talk about upgrading a little bit. So I just want to say, in case I say anything, nothing in future releases is promised until it's there. It's not there. So in case I do say anything about what's coming in the future. And a very important note when we talk about the cascading interactive filters, all the out-of-the-box filters, check to make sure that you have a license. The custom filters don't currently do that, but they still require a license to cover interactive filters. So out-of-the-box interactive filters or custom interactive filters, both require performance analytics license for the data you're covering. So if you have a CSM license, you need PA for CSM. If you have PA Enterprise, it covers everything. Before deploying a custom interactive filter, make sure that you verify that you're entitled to use interactive filters on that data set. Because it's custom, you're writing the code, it won't stop you like it would for a normal interactive filter, but do make sure that you're in compliance with your subscription. All right, so let's talk about why I need to use a custom interactive filter. There's plenty of use cases that come in. Most use cases out of the box filters work that I can configure a reference. That's what we see the vast majority of the time. Choice list works really well, but there's use cases where it doesn't get to me to where I need to go. So if I have a choice list, choice lists only apply to a single table at a time out of the box, but I can do a custom interactive filter so that I could do something like show me all the incidents and incident tasks for P1 incidents. So I don't want to have 2 filters. That's how I'd have to do it today. I want to have one single filter where I select the priority and it shows, and that filter applies to both incident and incident tasks. A text search. We're going to do an example of this one in a few minutes, but I want to do a text search. I just want to search for all of my incidents with a short description of email. Interactive filters out of the box, it's a reference, not a string search or a keyword search. ORing filters, this one comes up occasionally. Interactive filters are all modular and they're ANDed together. But if I really need to do an OR where an incident was opened by or requested by a specific person, I would need to create a single interactive filter that could be ANDed. But in that single interactive filter, I can have an OR. A date picker, there's an example of this on the community. I don't want to use the normal this week, last week, this year, last month, last 30 days, but I want to pick a specific set of dates that you could do a date interactive filter. Custom UI controller, the one I've seen is a slider. I want to filter integers by slider, how many days something has been open, how many times has something been reopened. I want to be able to have a slider to pick those things. I could use a custom interactive filter for that. And then if you have some complex logic, so interactive filters are referenced as choice Booleans, but there will be certain cases where I have a scripted filter that I want to call and I need to pass a value to that scripted filter. I could do a custom interactive filter that would let me select the value, which is passed to the scripted filter. There's an example, there's a blog entry we have about complex queries where we talk about scripted filters. It's a larger topic, but I can use a custom interactive filter to call that scripted filter. So there are other use cases, but these are ones that I've seen where I needed to do something custom. Before I do it though, I still always want to look at, custom is in the name, right? We want to configure ServiceNow to meet my needs. Customization is a bad word. And these are custom interactive filters. So I want to make sure that I think about, am I really getting what I want? And the things that I consider, the customization is very flexible. Again, I can do all of those things I just talked about. But on the negative side, there's minimal ServiceNow support because it's code I'm writing. And there's potential upgrade challenges. We're using the APIs that are there today. We're going to use Jelly. Not everything is guaranteed to be there. And ServiceNow can't test your stuff. You need to test it, right? So every upgrade for your custom interactive filters, you need to make sure that they are still working. The interactive filters have worked fine for several releases, but that's no guarantee that they will work for 10 more releases. They may stop at some point in time. We may change the API. Then you would need to make your changes so that you could use the new APIs. On the positive side of using configuration, I get a consistent look and feel. It's fully supported by ServiceNow, known upgrade path. We test all the upgrades for all the interactive filters. We can make sure that those work. And again, if you write it, you have to test it. The downside of just using it configured out of the box is that I'm restricted on what I can do. Again, I can't meet those use cases we just talked about, so then I have to go custom. Be sure that what you're doing really needs to be custom because it does introduce some costs to you, right? It introduces time and potentially headaches, but you get some benefits. So you always need to balance those things. So let's talk about what an interactive filter really is. It's a bit of a mystery to many of us, but an interactive filter down in the middle is comprised of two things as far as we're concerned. There's the dashboard message handler API. That is a JavaScript client-side library that we call, which then manages how interactive filters work for reports. It does all the magic. It does the hard stuff. What we're talking about today, when we're talking about a custom interactive filter, is customizing the user interface. So we want to put a new skin, a new UI to call the dashboard message handler so that we get a custom interactive filter. We don't have any real server-side code, we're not touching any Java, we're not doing any heavy lifting or modifying the report. We are just creating a new UI to call the dashboard message handler with slightly different parameters to meet my needs. All right, so the secret to interactive filters, if you remember nothing, this is it. It's encoded query strings. All we are doing is we are building an encoded query string that we're going to pass to the dashboard message handler to apply. The out-of-the-box standard interactive filters create encoded query strings for us and pass it. We're just going to be modifying that query string to meet our needs. So here's an example. On the debug filter, which we'll talk about how you use that, works for custom interactive filters as well as standard interactive filters. In the bottom here, I have 3 standard interactive filters. I believe they're all standard. And by using those, it creates this property that we're seeing in the debug homepage filters, the debug interactive filter. It allows me to see what's being sent. And just to zoom in a little bit, from those 3 interactive filters, I have 3 arrays that are passed that say for this table, apply this filter. For incident, apply assignment group is in one of these incidents, one of these groups. For incident, apply priority is 2. For incident spotlight, which I may or may not be using, apply this logic, this encoded query string, encoded query string. And for incident, apply this one. You'll notice for the bottom 2, it's a very similar encoded query string. It's actually the same, except the field that it applies to is different. So for the first one, it's incident opened. For the second, it's just opened at because it's referencing incident. All we're doing in our custom interactive filters is saying, for this table, apply this filter. Some other downsides that we have to look about. We have unsupported features in custom interactive filters. So there's a long list. This is in the documentation, so you can go back to it. But setting defaults, retaining, which are defaults, loading, unload, exporting the PDF. There's things that you don't get. Some of them can be done, but you can't necessarily, it's a little bit harder, right? And the example we're gonna go through today, none of these things are supported. All right, you can take a screenshot of this really quickly, and we'll post these links when we're out. But these are some really important things that you're gonna wanna know. So the interactive filter docs, this is documented, the stuff we're talking about. There's an example of an interactive filter, it's very similar to what we're gonna show, it's slightly different use case. Encoded query strings, it's very important to understand encoded query strings. There's documentation on that. The debug filter, how to create system widgets. And we've done a lab on this the last 2 years at Knowledge. Very well likely might be one at K20, goes into a lot more detail. It's a 100-minute lab with a lot more examples. We're doing this in about 2 or 3 more minutes. So there is a lot more to do. There's a lot of capabilities you can add, but we want to just expose you to the capabilities. So we're gonna do a quick demo. I'm gonna exit out of here. And pick up my web browser. Are you guys seeing Chrome now? I'll take that as a yes, otherwise Tom would be yelling at me.
That's good.
Okay, so this is the example we started with, or we ended with last week or 2 weeks ago with custom interactive, cascading interactive filters. These are out of the box filters, reports. We're just gonna add on to this. So what I'm gonna do first on this dashboard is I'm gonna add the debug filter. Whenever I am working on a interactive filters, particularly custom interactive filters, I always wanna see what I'm getting, what's being sent to the dashboard message handler. So I'm gonna go to interactive filters and debug at the bottom. You may not have seen this before, but it should be there for everybody. And I am going to add. And what that is going to show me, this is there for everybody, so you don't want to do this, you don't want to leave this on all the time, but it's gonna show me the interactive filters that are being sent. So again, I can come in here and apply my out-of-the-box filter for database, which should have shown me my filter. Let me switch to make sure that picks it up. There we go. So I have I have a filter ID for the task table, apply this department, and the other configuration options that are used. So now we're gonna write our custom interactive filter. For my custom interactive filter, the quickest way to do it is with a dynamic content block. In the lab, we go through how to do it in UI macro. You get a little bit more configuration options. So you get a little bit more power by doing it, but the simplest way to do it is a dynamic content block. So I'm going to create a dynamic content block. And I'm going to create a filter called short description. The category doesn't really matter. We need it to be active. This is my entire filter. This is everything I need. I like to put a lot of this stuff in UI macros and call it, make it a little bit more robust. But at the end of the day, this is all I need. And what we're doing here is initializing the JavaScript API, the client-side API dashboard message handler with the unique ID. This is not a great example because my unique ID, if I put 2 of these with my unique ID, that ID is not unique. So I like to put a sys ID in here, something that is guaranteed to be unique because it's going to deal with a client-side JavaScript scope. So if this is not unique, you might get collisions. In this case, I'm only putting in one, so it's fine. I'm using that same handler. So this is the dashboard message handler I want to use. What table I want to apply it to? I want to apply it to task. The example here is just applying it to one table, but you can apply it to multiple, slightly different syntax. And then my filter, my encoded query string. What I want to have is short description like whatever I send. So a custom or a standard interactive filter is just saying assignment group in, assigned to equals. But here we're doing short description like anything. This is any text that I can get to be an encoded query string. And then this is the format to set the default values. And then I want to publish the filter. So for this table, apply this filter. And I have incident short description. This actually applies to tasks. So I'm just going to put this as short description. And all this is an HTML text field that has an on-change call this JavaScript function. You can get as fancy as you want, but this is bare bones for us right now. And I've created my dynamic content block. I'm going to come in here. I'm not going to go to interactive filters because I didn't create an interactive filter. I created a content block. And we are going to search for short description. It's what I just created. And now when I come in here, we're going to get this all in one screen at a time. I have all of my my incidents right here that are coming through, and I'm going to search for printer. And what we see is now I'm only seeing incidents, 2 incidents, seeing those 2 incidents, standard reports that are listening, just like everything else. My standard interactive filters, my custom interactive filters are all just anded together. So this is where the caller is from customer support, and there is an incident in it. Just make sure that that's in there. Yeah. And up here, we see that standard interactive filter that's the same, but what we've added in here is my unique ID filter applies to the task table, short description like printer. If I change this to email, there's nothing with email, but you see here that email comes in. Nothing with storage, and we're going to go back to all. And now all I have is short description like storage. There we go. Again, I have my filters, my custom interactive filter that works just like a standard filter. My reports, I still have to set to listen, so it's good if you have something here. Don't create custom interactive filters that you don't need. If you can use a standard one, use a standard one, but you do have this power to create custom ones. I'm going to stop here with a couple of just quick reminders. So a couple of closing thoughts for us. If you need more, a couple things we didn't talk about, there's again a lot more examples in the K19 lab. I generally want to use UI macros instead of dynamic content blocks, but that adds an extra layer of what we have to do. System widgets, there was a link to those. That's where you're able to actually add more dropdowns to the dashboard. So we had to pick a content block, which listed all the content blocks. System widgets let you customize that. So I can just have custom interactive filters or ITIL interactive filters or CSM interactive filters, whatever you want to call it. You can create a dropdown that just contains your information. We touched on it just briefly, but custom client callable script includes can really do amazing things. They can really do some complex querying, make a much better user experience to get exactly what you want to look for. So there's a lot of information out there on the community that helps you put this together between scripted filters and then custom interactive filters. And the key points, everything's a query string. If you can build a query string, if you can build an encoded query string on a list view, you can create a custom interactive filter that does that, turns it on and off, modifies it. If you cannot build a custom interactive, if you cannot build a query string, you can't build a custom interactive filter. There is no additional magic. It is an encoded query string. If you can't do it, take a look at your data model. But if you can get that query in a list view, you can then make that an interactive filter. And the main purpose for this is to focus on the end user. Give them the interface that they need to have so that they can get what they want to get to. A lot of times, it's A or B. Just give them a choice list choice that's A or B and applies whatever those filters need to be. Okay, that is the end of the presentation. I think now we're able to open it up for questions about interactive filters. Hopefully we can start with that, and then we'll proceed to anything else that you guys have questions about. The first question came in. It was a keyword search. Yeah, keyword search is done in. If you look at the encoded query or the encoded query documentation, it shows you the syntax for searching keywords. It's like 1, 2, 3 keywords, 3, 2, 1 or something like that. But it absolutely works for keyword search, which is very powerful and useful because that's searching all the fields that are tagged for that. The next question is, this was for reports, not PA widget. That's correct. Interactive filters only work on reports. And this is a feature that is licensed with PA, but it only applies to reports. Another question came in, if the conditions will be ANDed together, and they will. So if I have a custom interactive filter or 2 custom interactive filters and 2 standard interactive filters, they will all be ANDed together. The actual processing, each widget is combined. If you needed to do an OR, you'd have to create one big custom interactive filter that then let you create that query string however you want. But the default behavior is that every interactive filter widget that's on gets ANDed together. Next question I see is, if I need a filter or some way of a user to pick 10 or more problem IDs, I need a custom interactive filter. No, if you were picking specific problem, well, you may. It depends on what the user experience you're looking for, but you could have a standard reference filter that just gives you a drop down of all the problem IDs, and you can pick as many as you want. And you could have some filters on there because hopefully you're not browsing 10,000 or 20,000 problem IDs. It's like active problem IDs assigned to me or something. I would certainly try to use a standard one, but given a user experience and what you're trying to do, you may want to go custom. It may work better for your users because then they can filter to get those problem IDs, but start with standard and see if that works for you. Okay, next one, good question. Meant to bring this up. What about custom fields that allow for multiple selections that is not a reference field? So a list collector, a list field, whether it's reference or choice and standard or custom. Let's say I want to say, show me all the incidents that I'm a watcher on. That's a standard field on incident. It does, you'd have to do a custom interactive filter. References are doing in or is on, but a list filter is stored as a string of values. So if you wanted to do choice list strings, or you wanted to do glide list like watch list, you would need to do a custom interactive filter. Next question is, thank you, I'll take that. I like easy ones. Okay. Let's see. Oh, good. Okay. Good. And choice lists, you're going to want to always throw the interactive filter, the debug filter on to see what you're doing and see what's coming back. Make sure you do a refresh so that it picks up the new JavaScript as you're working on your dynamic content block. But between choice lists, just be careful if you're doing a list collector in that it's stored, you have to do likes, you can't do equals. I think if you build the encoded query string, you'll see we're doing a contains because the choices can be stored in any order. It may have commas in them. So just be careful with what you're doing. Also, I will say, so you're always going to want to use the interactive debug filter. When I'm writing new code like that, I'm doing JavaScript, client-side JavaScript. I have my browser developer tools up as well in case I have a typo. If you have a typo, it's not going to, your interactive filter just doesn't work. Your browser's development tool should show you that. That console should show you those errors, and it's very useful. Another question on limitations on scorecard reports. When you say scorecard reports, are you talking about single score reports or performance analytics scorecards? A single score. There's not. I don't know of any specific limitations. The report's a report. The interactive filters will work on all of these, just like any other interactive filter. So you shouldn't have any unknown limitation, or you shouldn't have any limitations unless there's just a specific use case I'm not aware of. Okay, and we have a question about cascading filters. By the way, any of the other ServiceNow guys who want to chime in, I'm happy to be quiet. Cascading interactive filters don't allow multiple values to be selected. That's correct. They are all single selects. If you needed to do some multi-select, you'd actually have to do a custom filter, it's a rough trade-off in that I like all the out-of-the-box functionality and all the configuration that I do with that out-of-the-box filter and supportability. But if for some reason I had to get down to a multi-select, I might have to go custom. I'm not aware of any time I actually did that. If I had to do it, I just did multiple single reference filters. But again, if it is a heavily used dashboard, it's very important that it works the way the users want to expect it to work. You have the ability to go custom. If you are doing that, again, this was a teaser to let you know that you can do it. I recommend getting that presentation, and the presentation from Knowledge 19 was recorded. So if anybody in your organization went to Knowledge, you should be able to download the presentation, get to the lab guide, and the entire, if you want to listen to me drone on for an hour and a half, it is recorded. All right, well, it looks like our interactive filter questions are wrapping up. So if anybody has any other questions, we're happy to let you take the floor and ask those, and we will try to answer them the best we can. So a question came up of I'm missing slush buckets in several places. I've encountered it for breakdowns to dashboards, adding indicators to pivot scorecards. What could be causing it? So I'm assuming this means on the related list, you don't have the edit button to just bulk edit things in. If it is, that's not there everywhere. I would take a look at a developer instance. If you could spin up a developer instance that's a clean out of the box instance, verify if it's there. If it is there out of the box and not on your instance, you actually should be able to add it, or you can open up a high case and have support help figure out why it's not there. It means somebody removed it or something happened to block it in an upgrade. But if it's not there out of the box, you can add it if you'd like, or you can add it if you'd like, but then you have to make sure you're watching for upgrades that doesn't cause any issues for you. But any related list you can add. So any M2M, you can add the edit button to get those slush buckets back. Okay, how about cascading filters on PA objects? Would we use breakdown relations instead? Yes, yeah. With PA, breakdown relations are the most equivalent functionality to cascading filters, because you are then jumping from A to B, unlimited levels. But the cascading filters, all interactive filters, do not work on performance analytics objects today. Okay, yeah, so I think coming back for the slush bucket issue, if it's on the dev instance and not in your instance, you may want to have your admin take a look at it to add it back in, or you can have a high case to figure out why it's not there. That would seem weird for somebody to remove it. Okay, a couple long questions. I need to read them for a second. So a question about having a data interactive filter, but two interactive filters on a tab. They switch tabs and come back, and it's not being honored. For custom interactive filters, the default behavior doesn't handle defaults and switching, but for standard interactive filters, it does. So if you're having that problem, I would put in a high ticket. Somebody needs to look at why that's not coming up. I'm not aware of a PRB on that, but that's something, if you're not on the latest release, it may be fixed in the latest release. But if your interactive filters are not on, if what you're seeing is not what you're getting in the reports, put in a high case and let's get that looked at and resolved, whether it's an issue on your instance or if there's a bigger issue. There's a question about measuring. I need to measure a ticket from create to now, and outside of PA. So I want to know how long a ticket's been open. There's lots of ways of doing this. So in PA, we do this all the time because we're always measuring how things that aren't closed, how long they've been open. If you're doing this outside of performance analytics, you have a couple options. The old way of doing it was with a calculated field, but that can cause some performance drags and some other issues. So generally, you're going to filter based off of just the create time. If it was created 6 days ago, it's not heavily used, but it's very useful for you if you do look at it. The relative flag, the relative filter. So instead of saying I want something from last week, you can say give me everything that's active today and opened more than 7 days ago, opened more than 3 hours ago, opened more than 6 months ago, and that often gives me what I'm looking for in that age, because I'm looking for everything older than something to take a look at. Alternatively, the way that I normally want to look at incidents that have been and how long they've been open is looking at the SLAs. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that things get closed in a timely manner. So by looking at SLAs, I have the business elapsed time, I have wall clock elapsed time and business elapsed time. That's often where I'm going. And then I'm just going to report on SLAs, my resolution SLA, how long has it been open? And again, really useful because while I do have wall clock, I've yet to make an organization that actually wants wall clock. They want business hours, right? They want SLA time. So if it was paused, don't hold that against me. So if I'm trying to look at and understand how long something has been open, I'm gonna want to take a look at how long it's. I want to look at the SLAs. That's generally where I'm going. Custom interactive filters applied scenario have been applied to some reports and not others. I would want to check and see if standard interactive filters are there too. It's simplistic, but the situation I normally run into when somebody tells me that is that on that report it's not being applied to, it's not actually listening to interactive filters at all. And whether it's custom or a standard interactive filter, the report has to be set to listen to that interactive filter. If that's not the case, then I'm also going to look at tables, because I'll run into a case where the two reports are based on two different tables, and my custom interactive filter wasn't set to run on both tables, which is something you have to configure. So I can't tell you everything, but that's where I would go with it, is that make sure that the report is listening at all, and that my interactive filter, use the debug interactive filter to verify that it's configured on those reports. Okay. Okay, let's go. All right, we have a more generic PA configuration question. So I will say this: if you are new to performance analytics, welcome to the club. Take some training. Your life will be better if you take training. There is a performance analytics essentials class, free, self-paced class. Takes anywhere to an hour and 2 hours. Gives you an amazing setup for how to look at PA and what it can do and what it can't do, and where reporting fits in. You take that hour of your life and take that class, or again, self-paced free class. Take that, it'll make your life better. Now this specifically is a more detailed question that wouldn't be covered in that class about on the Analytics Hub. It's missing the Compare tab, and you have the Overview tab. Make sure that you are collecting records on that indicator. For the Compare tab to exist, you have to have records. So if I'm looking at the Analytics Hub, I want to show records, and then once I'm showing records, I should be able to do my compare. But if I have an indicator where I am not collecting records, I will not have show records, and I will not have a compare tab. Same thing for formula indicators. I will not have records on a formula, and I will not have the compare tab. So if you're looking at an automated indicator, make sure you're collecting the records. That's generally where you're going to see that. Okay. A question about emailed summaries, about it's sending the email, but there's no indicator in the email. There's out of the box, it should be, you want to check the notification. There is a emailed summary notification format. I wonder if that got screwed up somehow. I'd probably put a case in high and have somebody from support take a look at that. The emailed summary should include those indicators. I actually don't know how the email would be generated if you didn't have indicators selected in it. Okay, another question about debug interactive filters. The debug interactive filter is on interactive filters. I'm actually not positive right now if you need to be, if you need any special role. I don't think you do. I think if you can add an interactive filter, if you go to add widgets to the dashboard, go to interactive filters, and then at the very bottom you'll see curly bracket debug curly bracket, and that's the debug homepage filters debug. Again, that's not just for you. That's going to be for anybody viewing that dashboard. So that is something you put on in development and then take off, or that's something that you put on in production to debug something and take it off. But while it's on there, it's just like any other widget. Everybody who views that dashboard will view it. Somebody is asking me to take a look at a community post. I will do that. I'm opening that in a new link right now. I'll put a plug in here. We do this session every 2 weeks, and love to hear your questions. And if anybody wants to get off mute, I'm happy to hear your voice and ask your questions. We do the presentation. The community is there 24/7. It is there all the time. So if you'd like to talk through your question, we're happy to do that, but ask your question to the community. You heard Tom for a minute, and you hear me for a long time in this session, and Peter and Isaac are on here. You have some great people to talk to. But the community has a lot more. You have the whole world accessible, and there are some awesome PA admins out there who answer questions. There's some awesome partners that are answering questions. So leverage the community as much as you can.
Hello, this is Wei. Can I ask a quick question on
Sure.
the interactive filters? Yeah. So let's say I have a like an interactive filter based on like let's say a simple like a choice or reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's just like a reference filter, and then my question is this, right? Once the user select any value, right? Let's say from the filter, right? It's a drop-down list, right? Let's say it's just a single select, right? So they pick one of the choices or one of the reference values. Once that's selected, can that value be stored anywhere to drive, like another filter on the report? Do you understand what I'm saying? So let's say that if the value is X, right, and that's selected on the fly, by the user on the dashboard. Let's say they select X as the value from the filter.
Yep. Can
I use that X value to, like a filter on the data, like in the next report, not on the same report? Do you understand what I'm saying? So let's say, the reason I say that is because sometimes it's multiple tiers of filtering. So
yeah, so the best answer I can give would be that if I was using report drill downs, it would hold on to it. So if I had a report of all open incidents, and I use an interactive filter, custom interactive filter, regular, doesn't matter, an interactive filter that said only show me mine, and then I use drill down in that report, it's already limiting it to mine.
Drill down, so, okay.
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing you ask for would be drill down in that, again, I have a report with all incidents. Interactive filter says select Adams incidents. And then I just want to see P1 incidents. Well, if I use if I had drill down, like the first report would show me my incidents by priority. I could click on P1s and then it would only be showing me P1 incidents for me because the first thing I clicked on was just mine.
But okay, but what I'm saying is this, right? So if you have selected your incidents, can
Mhm.
that selection be used in scripting to drive further to
In scripting,
Yeah, like a calling a script include. For example, what I mean by that is, for example, I want to know, like in your case, right? For example, it's like this, right? It's based on, like, for example, I want to understand all the related CIs for your incidents, right? So I want to be able to use what you have selected to poll all the
Yeah.
related CIs, right?
Sure. So what you would end up building is a custom interactive filter that looks like a cascading filter. So it wouldn't modify the report necessarily. It might. Um, so you wouldn't use it in the report, but you'd have to do a custom interactive filter that you pick the user, which then gets the CIs owned by that user, which then gives me the incidents for the CIs that are owned by that user.
Right, but like I said, the question I really have is like, on the dashboard, if the user selects, if the user goes to an interactive filter and selects the value, let's say the value is X, doesn't matter whether it's a
Yep.
user or a CI. So where is that value stored, and can that be used in any script?
Yes. So for a standard interactive filter, you can do it. It's stored in the JavaScript object. If you pull up, it's a bit more detailed than here. But if you go look at, there was a post on the community about this. But if you look at the canvas objects,
Okay.
it is stored in there. If you go to in the console, if you go to SNC, I think canvas interactive filters, you actually see all those values. They're stored in a JavaScript object in the browser.
So every time the user selects anything, it will be captured.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's how it's a great question, and it's in depth. So I apologize for being short, but it is stored there. It's in the object. That's what the dashboard message handler or the debug interactive filter is just showing you what's in that object. It's just that thing is actually really simple. It's just saying, show me what's in the JavaScript.
That's cool.
And then you do have access to it. So you could have an interactive filter that doesn't do any filtering, that you're just looking for to pick up what's going on.
Okay, that's cool. So that means I can access that, I can use that in a scripting include if possible, right?
Well, I mean, it's still going to be all client side. So
yeah.
It's all client side, but you could send it back to the server. You can use the table API. There's lots of stuff that you could do.
Right. I just want to know, where I can,
explore everything you're saying is in the JavaScript object. But I will say though, this is one of those areas that is subject to change in an upgrade. So
okay, got it.
make sure you really are getting a lot of value out of it, and then make sure you test it in an upgrade. The more, we document the dashboard message handler, but there's plenty of other data that's there that you could use. You can do some really cool stuff, but be careful and just be aware that just because you figured out how to work does not, if it's not documented on the developer site, then it's not supported.
Okay, got it.
So use with caution, but there's some cool stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Good luck. I look forward to some community posts because I'm sure you're gonna have some questions. Good luck. The next is there's an out-of-the-box 50K limitation in PA. Is there a change in the future where only the scores are needed, not the underlying records, that'll address the limitation? This is a bigger subject, but the 50K limitation in PA really does relate to underlying scores, to the underlying records being collected. If you're not collecting the records, you can raise that limit. There's a lot to it about where that limit comes from. 50K is very safe. If you needed to make it 100K, I'm not going to have a lot of heartburn. If you want to make it 5 million, I will have a little bit of heartburn. So it depends on your use case. For a specific question, specific use case, we need to talk about what you're trying to do and how to do it. I'd recommend that you talk to ask a question through your account executive, through your SC. we'll get you the right information about what you can do and how to do it. The 50K limit is a very safe number for us. You aren't going to have problems if you're under 50K, but we're happy to talk about that, about how to meet your use case. There is a lot PA can do, but you have to know what you're doing. Another question about, and they're coming in faster than we can answer, about interactive filters. Call a script include. Standard ones cannot, custom ones can. And that is one of the use cases where I will use a custom interactive filter, because I need to select a value that is going to get passed to a function in a custom client callable script include. And I do say client callable, so make sure you collect client callable. But just like I'm a big fan of dynamic filter options, where you're making where you're doing the is dynamic. You can do that same thing yourself. You can write custom. You can use a standard dynamic filter option effectively. You can use your own custom script include as long as it's client callable. Create a custom interactive filter, and again, it's just creating that query string. So make sure that in the list view, you can get that encoded query string, and then you can have a custom interactive filter build that query string for you. Okay, next question about the snapshot table. The snapshot table in PA. The snapshot table in PA is when you collect records, the sys IDs of those records are stored in the snapshots. That is the very quick answer about that. I am not positive how much detail we go to in the PA essentials, but if you do not collect records, there's not a matching record for it. The scores are all stored in the scores tables. The snapshot, if you collect records, we have a field that just has a list of sys IDs for those records. That's the short answer on that. See another link to community. I'm opening these up, and I'll look at those later today and see what we can do. How long? Okay, out of the box dashboards, content packs. Great question. Please, somebody ask this every time. We need to talk about more content packs more often. Whenever you are starting a new project, go look for a content pack. The documentation for the content packs is getting really good. Anything new is really good, and we're updating the old stuff to make it better as well. There's a list. Hopefully, somebody can add it in here for us of all the performance analytics content packs that are out there. I think we're somewhere around 60. If I'm looking for a customer service management dashboard, there is an entry in the documentation under customer service for customer service content packs. I think there's 5 or 6 of those. They should include screenshots of what's there, but not just the screenshots that are there, but the personas that are there, the indicators that are there, the widgets that are there, the reports that are there. We're going to give you as much information as possible. Several years ago, we used to create a PDF for each of the subject areas. Now that's in the documentation. So you should see it there. If you want, hopefully that's enough to convince you that this is going to be a lot of value for you. I also recommend getting a developer instance. Those a free dev instance. Sign up on the developer.servicenow.com. Turn it on there. You can turn on anything you want on the content packs. Take a look, make sure it's meeting your needs. A lot of the content packs now are going to get you 90% of where you want to get to, maybe further. And if not, even if it's getting you 50%, that can still save you days or weeks. So whatever subject area you're looking for, go look at that content pack. At this point, you should assume there's already a content pack and somebody's already answered your question for most of what we're doing. Unless you have a custom app, then you're on your own. But anything out of the box, any out of the box ServiceNow solution should have a content pack that goes with it. That's going to be very helpful. A mistake that we see is that people just they turn on a new solution with ServiceNow and they want to use their old reporting. But just like you want to embrace the new process that ServiceNow brings, you want to use our new analytics. We spend a lot of time, a lot of focus creating dashboards and the out-of-the-box content to help you manage your business. At least look at that, show that to your process owners. It's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of headache, and you're going to benefit from everybody else that's doing the same things. Okay. So question about the PA admin role to build new dashboards and prod directly. Hopefully we're going to publish the rest of the office hours. If we don't have it on there, we'll talk about governance and performance analytics and how to do that. Creating a dashboard is fine. You don't need to be PA admin. Any user can create a dashboard in production. Any user, any role. As long as you have a role, I believe you can create a dashboard in production. It's okay. I am a big advocate for creating all my performance analytics, indicators, sources, jobs, all that stuff in development in an update set and push it through and test it. I want to test my analytics, make sure they're valid. I want to do UAT on my analytics, make sure they are valid, and then push them to production. It is a balancing act, right? And it's a bigger discussion about what makes sense for you. I recommend that you come up with a policy and follow it. The biggest issue you can run into is that some people make changes to production, some do them in update sets, and it's a headache. So make sure you clearly define what's allowable, what's not allowable for your organization, and what needs to go through change control, and what needs to go through, what needs to be done in the subprod, what doesn't. And I will take a look and see if we can get on here our presentation on governance and how we recommend you think about governance. It is always organization specific, but there's a lot of good information on it. I'm ignoring the safe module question, the content pack. It is coming. I believe that's going to be available in the store, but I do not have the date on that. Oh, good. Isaac answered that for us. And a follow-up question about the documentation. So on the new content pack documentation, you should see the dashboards. If there's one that's missing, feel free. Well, I recommend if you want to see it yourself that you do it on a developer instance. Just spin it up and take a look. But you can always ask your AE or your SC, and we will get you that information. We are going through, particularly some of the older content packs that have been around, updating that documentation. That is a big focus for us, is to make sure you know what you're getting. But again, you can activate it on a subprod, or you can activate it in developer instance to really see if it makes sense for you. Don't activate a content pack in production until you've at least done it on your subprod and make sure it makes sense. There's always some configuration that you're going to want to do on those indicator sources to make sure they're relevant to you. Best example being is, my organization has a P0, but in the out-of-the-box content doesn't know about a P0. So we filter things for P1s. You'd want to go in the indicator source and say, no, include P0s and P1s in critical incidents. Really simple, really small, but it's something you're always going to want to do. Hopefully I have that, saying that correctly. Post a question in the community about describing what you're trying to do. I will answer it, but I'm also curious if some other people do. And that way we'll have that recorded in case anybody else is looking for it, about where the client-side JavaScript objects we were talking about, what's available to you. Content pack activation. Again, another great question about, is it extra? If you are licensed for the PA for that data, the content packs are available for you. There's no separate content pack license. So if I'm licensed for PA for HR, the HR content packs are available for you, as well as the platform content packs. So like the knowledge content pack, as long as you have a license for PA, you get the knowledge one. That's a platform feature. So as you're looking for it, the subscription management should control it. If you have a question, ask your account executive. They will be able to answer that for you about what you're entitled to. But if I have CSM Pro, I'm licensed for the CSM content packs. It should be pretty straightforward on what you are and what are not licensed for. And a follow-up, yes, it's better to build in dev first. There's more process. Process is good, right? For really important analytics, really important indicators. I am a big fan of UAT, and having somebody from my business sponsor agree that what we're producing is what they're getting. We're even getting towards the end. Will there be another great question? Really good questions today. Will there be any performance impact if I increase the limit of the properties for breakdown collections, number of records? What happens? Isaac, you want to answer that? I've been talking for an hour.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so changing the property doesn't actually affect the performance of the instance. What will what can affect actually the performance of the instance is the number of records you are collecting. So by changing the property doesn't change anything in the process that we're collecting, but there is a difference if you collect 100,000 records and 10 million records. So by changing the property, it's not doing anything in the process, but changing the number of records that you are collecting, that can make the collection a bit slower than usual. So this is the impact that you need to be careful of. You have to be aware that the number of records you are collecting are the correct ones, and changing the property it's irrelevant as long as you collect an expected number, an expected record set. So yeah, if you go crazy and you want to collect for all the records that exist on the task table, for example, then yeah, the collection will be quite slower than it used to be. So I hope this answers your question.
And if you are messing with the properties, make sure you do it in a subprod first. Make sure everything runs in acceptable timeframes. And I will say, when you're talking about performance, the two really quick things I look at for job runtime, the number of records matters, but scripts really matter. So make sure you're not using scripts if you don't need to use a script. Do not use scripts, PA scripts, to cover up for bad application design. So I only like PA scripts that have score start or score end on them because those require a PA script logically. But virtually everything else I can do with a view, or I can do by creating a new field that processes the data. So it stores the data I need on the table rather than calculating it on the fly. A PA script is somewhat similar to a calculated field. It's useful if you need it, but you know, it's not free performance-wise. So the scripts are the first things I look at for job runtime. And then the number of elements in a breakdown is what I see as the contributing factor to performance issues on a dashboard. So if I'm looking at a dashboard breakdown and it's got 100,000 is gonna be a problem. Well, the dashboard breakdown has 100,000 people or users for assigned to, the performance is not gonna be great. So I want to restrict things in my breakdowns to be as few elements as possible that cover my data set. So if I wanted to look at assigned tos, I would have a breakdown source that's not all of sysuser, but that is all of sysuser that has had an incident assigned to them in the last 6 months with a related list condition. Something to make sure that list is no bigger than it needs to be. But the number of elements has to do with the dashboard render time, and scripting is the biggest issue related to job run performance time. And scripting, it's a combination of scripting and the number of records in your indicator source. If I have to run a script on 10 records, it doesn't really matter. If I have to run a script on 100,000, I start to see more of an issue.
Hey, Adam, I'm going to jump in here. We're just about out of time. So thank you, everyone, for hopping on here. We'll get this recording polished up and posted shortly. I also want to clarify one thing Adam said. He said there were really good questions today. We love your questions every session. They're always good, so keep them coming.
That's what I mean. That's what I meant to say.
If we didn't get to something that you had in the back of your mind, like Adam mentioned, go ahead and post that to the community. We have folks looking at it, partners and other PA admins. Hopefully we'll help you out there. And then I'm going to post the URL in the chat here. We'll have our next office hours session on September 11th. But on the 12th, we'd also love if you'd like to join us for a special broadcast that's going to show off the New York release. So there'll be a broadcast keynote and then separate breakout sessions for IT workflows, employee workflows, customer service workflows, and a Now platform specific section. So I'd love to have you there. The URL's in the chat if you'd like to go ahead and sign up. We'll see you either in 2 weeks or a day after that. Thanks, everyone.